Success is like a marathon, yet the modern entrepreneurial advice is to just go Usain Bolt mode on that shit and just sprint it out. Like, what do I actually mean by this? What are you talking about, Marcus? Well, hang on 1 second. Let me just set this up. All right. So, before we get into it, like, what am I actually talking about? How is this going to help you, like, gain success? And by success, I don't just mean monetary success. It's not all just about, oh my God, I'm going to make money. It's about actually building a life that you enjoy, right? Why do I have authority to speak on this? You're probably like, how old's this kid? He looks like he's about 15. He sounds like he's about 10. What's going on? Well, fair points. Basically, for the past year or so, I've been working on my mind, absolutely destroying this procrastination shit, dominating productivity, like actually figuring out how all this stuff works, how all this mindset stuff works. And I can confidently say now that I'm at the point where I hope that was, sorry, just to interrupt, I hope that was my protein pancake and not some other brown thing on the table. I'm confidently at a point where I can say that I've mastered productivity and like zero procrastination, zero lack of focus, any of this stuff, right? I'm that confident I can say that. But that being said, if you're like, well, what's this guy talking about? Like, how can he speak about having his own dream life? Well, because I've been able to do that, because I've been able to master my mind, I've started my own business, I've been able to do all this shit, and now I'm a digital nomad, I can travel the world, blah, 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 boring. Now, okay, what are we talking about here? So, the modern entrepreneurial advice is to, like, if you want to be rich, if you want to become successful, just do this, like, 10K per month shit, like, it's like, oh, you don't know how to make money online? Read the caption. And then it's like some dickhead and he's like, step 1, make a product. Step 2, it's like all this bullshit, right? And it really pisses me off because for the past 9 years, I was listening to this advice and I was believing it to be true. And I was basically like following this trend of like success equals work hard. Success equals like go your hardest, otherwise you will die and you will fail. Like genuinely, like, because of the nature of social media nowadays, the way you get clicks is by constantly one-upping each other. So over time, these messages have just evolved from like, hey, like, make sure you work hard on your business, to like, if you don't wake up at 3 a.m. and you like hold in your piss and you don't work for 8 hours, you're gonna be dead broke and your whole family is gonna die in a hurricane, right? Like that's a modern Instagram reel, like caption advice shit, right? So we'll get told that if you want to be successful, you need to work. You need to hustle, you need to grind. You've heard all these words before, I'm not going to bring them up because they're kind of cringy to be honest. But the reality is, a lot of that shit is just not true, and it's actually way more damaging than it comes out to be, right? On the surface level, it seems like, oh, motivation. You get a little dopamine boost, you keep scrolling, oh, motivation, right? This is what it's made for. The reality is though, whenever people try to start a business with this advice in mind, they fail, they can't work, they suffer, all this stuff. How do I know? Because I do this for a living, blah, 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 boring. And my point in this video is that if you want to be successful, you need to be in it for the long run, right? That's kind of how this shit works. If success was a matter of like 2 months, then everyone would be successful, everyone would be rolling around like Andrew Tate, Bugatti's going crazy, smoking cigars in Dubai, all this stupid shit. So if success was actually valuable, right? This is supply and demand. If success was valuable, then we can assume that there's a low supply. And the reason that there's a low supply is because it takes a while to get, right? It's like common knowledge, right? So if we could just like download a Notion template and then sell that for $500 like all these Instagram reels portray, then everyone would be rich, wouldn't they? Oh, obviously, okay? So, and if we want to be successful, then we need to understand a few things, such as law of diminishing returns, the compound effect, and one other thing I'm going to bring up at the end, right? So let's start with the law of diminishing returns. So the law of diminishing returns states that essentially, like, pretty much all systems have a cap. So you can't just keep putting inputs into a system and then it eventually reaches like, and it just constantly scales 1 to 1. So think of this like a line graph or whatever they're called, like a scale. So we start here, we put in an input and it slowly grows over time, right? But the law of diminishing returns states that we'll eventually reach a point and then it can't keep going up. It's eventually going to flatten out, right? Or it's going to flatten out, maybe go down, maybe go up, right? Like, then it regresses to the mean, and that's the average, right? So this is basically a law. We can see this in pretty much a lot of systems within business. We can see this with our own system. So like, for example, when I first got into the gym, I didn't understand this to be the case. So I low-key thought that like protein was steroids. So I just tried to eat all the protein I could, right? And I was just buying all the shit like protein this, how much protein's in this, getting all this protein, and I was like doing all this stuff just so I could like stop hating myself, right? Because I thought that the more muscle I get, the happier I'd be. Turns out it's not true, but valuable lesson learned. Now the thing is, this works the exact same in success, no matter how we define it. There's only a limited amount of inputs we can put before that shit kind of caps out, and then more inputs doesn't actually keep it scaling. So if we think like input 1 to output, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. We put an input, it goes up, 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 up. Eventually we're going to reach a point where we put in one input, but it only equals like 0.1 of the input, if that makes sense. So it's like a 10-to-1 ratio. But the thing with this modern productivity advice is that it's like, you need to put in work constantly, you need to grind, you need to hustle. Sorry, just spat everywhere. The thing is, law of diminishing returns just states this isn't true, right? This is like an actual law of the universe. This isn't true. We can't infinitely grind, we can't infinitely hustle. Not only from a results perspective, like not only will our results cap out and then the more inputs we do don't matter, without some sort of leverage or yada yada yada. But the thing is, when we look at it from this point of view, the more we put in is actually hurting us in the long run because it's increasing burnout. It's increasing this like imposter syndrome, like essentially it's like a lag between who we are and who we think we should be and who we've been in the past, right? So when we grow really quickly, essentially this creates the gap of imposter syndrome. And then we think, oh shit, I'm not where I was 2 weeks ago. I feel bad, I'm gonna regress. And this is how self-sabotage happens. Basically, up and down cycles. I want to be something. Oh, wait, I'm not that thing. Boom, back down. I want to be something. Oh, wait, I'm not that thing. Self-sabotage, back down, right? This is how this stuff works. So the thing is, we can always do more. We can always work more. We can work like 8, 10, 12, 14, 16-hour days, but it's not going to get us results, right? And we also need to define what work actually is because, once again, it's like, just hustle more, just grind more. These are all just words that are they're just fluff. They have no meaning. They're just air, right? So how do we actually define work? Well, the way I define work is like something meaningful is created that has a purpose and is its most valuable form, right? I think if we could do something under that definition of work every single day, we could confidently say that we've been a productive individual and that we actually do things, right? But instead, this modern productivity advice places all the value on how many hours worked. So then we'll constantly be trying to one-up this. Oh, I did 8 hours today, I did 9 hours today. Andrew Tate said this was good. Goddamn, this guy said this was good. He does 10 hours, I'm going to do 11 hours. I'm going to beat him, right? I'm competitive, I'm a hustler, I'm a grinder, whatever these words are, right? The thing is, we reach a cap of law of diminishing returns where essentially we'll work for 6 hours. If we keep going without proper recovery, that work is like a 8-to-1 ratio or like a 10-to-1 ratio. Like we're still doing more hours of work, but our brains over here, we got brain fog, we're not on task, our phone's distracting us, like we feel sick, we're tired, we'd rather be doing something else. And then in this gap where all this negative shit spawns, that's where burnout, that's where imposter syndrome, that's where self-sabotage can manifest, right? It's like, yeah, technically we're doing more work, but the thing is, we're only doing more work in the sense of hours. We're not actually creating anything of value. And on top of that, the only thing that's really being created is this low perception of ourselves, this low perception of our work. And ultimately, that's what brings us down in the long run. And if we think about entrepreneurship, once again, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Content creation, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So what do I mean by this? Well, you'll commonly see online how to make money in 2 months, how to like do all this dog shit in 2 months. Sure, you can do it in 2 months, and there's outliers that have done that, but for our own benefit, if we actually want to succeed, if we want to have like, the thing is, you can't really fail entrepreneurship, you can't really fail content creation if you're applying 2 things. Progressive overload and the scientific method. And if you're a little bit confused on those things, they're not super relevant. I'll make another video if you're interested, but we can't really fail if we apply these 2 things. But we can fail if we quit or if we burn out, right? So that's the only reason why we can fail. And the easiest way to fail, the easiest way to create this burnout is by doing more than what we actually need to and increasing our negative perception of our work and of ourselves. So, because entrepreneurship and content creation can essentially be mastered in time like a marathon, we know that we can get there eventually, right? It's not about, like, it's not like the finish line keeps moving. All we have to do is run and consistently stay in the race, and eventually we'll get to our desired goal. And the reason this is important to understand is because of compound interest or compound effect, whatever you want to call it. You've heard of this before, so I'm not going to go on about it. But essentially, money, especially YouTube, like content creation, all this stuff operates on a compound scale, exponential scale rather. So what this means is that like you're putting the inputs and then eventually they kind of stack on top of each other and then feedback loops kick in, and then like when you get $1, you can invest $1 and then you'll get $2, and then when you invest $2, you get $4 and blah, 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 blah. Like, you know how this stuff works. It's the same with views on YouTube. You know, one person watches your video, he shares it with his mate then shares it with another, so then you go from 1 to 2 to 2 to 4 to 4 to 8, blah, 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 blah. This is how this stuff works. So the only way we can fail in content creation, entrepreneurship, knowledge work, a lot of this stuff, is by just not staying in the game, is by quitting the marathon. But the modern entrepreneurial advice will tell you, hey bro, no, this isn't a marathon, sprint. You're versing everyone else, sprint. And then you're like, well, like, isn't it like 42 kilometers? Like you're telling me to sprint, it just does. No, sprint, bro. Like, buy my ebook and sprint. Like, it doesn't really seem wise. Like, why don't I get kind of tired? No, just sprint. Oh, okay. 2 months later, we burn out, we go again, and the cycle continues, right? I'm not doing the word. This is the last 9 years of my life because I trusted this advice. And I kept going up and down and up and down and up and down. And the only reason I broke this up and down cycle was because I actually understood this and I focused on the long term. And more importantly, I didn't optimize for adding things. I didn't optimize for hustling. I didn't optimize for grinding. I optimized for removing all the negative bullshit, removing all the negative stuff that was holding me back, and removing all the stuff that was causing the burnout, pulling the veil over that shit, and then realizing, oh, when you actually get rid of all this negative stuff that this society tells you and the world will build up on you, eventually all you're left with is pure productivity and love for your work. And that is the only driver to success. It's like, all this shit has been clipped out of context. All this shit is only being said because it's sexy, right? You see a TikTok of some guy saying, oh my God, you need to hustle and grind. It's like, yeah, that's cool, but that gives me more dopamine than some guy like myself saying like, hey bro, like just, you know, focus on your recovery, bro. Like, don't be an idiot. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Of course, the guy that says, you know, hustle and grind and run and you're going to die if you don't get money in 2 months. Of course, that guy's going to get more views because it triggers something in our brain, makes us feel good, dopamine, negativity bias, all this stuff. And the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because this shit genuinely changed my life. So that's kind of my point here, is that this is what this YouTube channel is for. This is what this mission's for. It's to evolve thinking. It's to get out of this old, like, modern day average knowledge worker bullshit, and it's to evolve our thinking. It's to make ourselves better. This is why I have the free community. You can join. It's not, you don't have to join. It's like not some random dog shit. So finally, for the last point, how do we actually stay in this shit for the long run? How do we get rid of all this negative, like hustling and burnout and imposter syndrome and all this stuff? Well, it's a bit of a loaded question. There's lots of ways to go about it. In terms of the pulling the veil and the negative stuff, I've made a few other videos on that, so you can check them out at the end or whatever. But the thing is, if we just want to stay in this game for the long run, and if we want to reduce this law of diminishing returns, we need to use our time well. So let's say in the day, we've got about 9 hours of work, right, that we could do. Let's just say the average person, 9 hours of work. Well, the average knowledge worker these days will spend about 6 of that grinding and hustling, and then like, or rather maybe like 5 hours grinding and hustling, like doing actual decent work, but then they spend the rest of the 4 hours just coping and just trying to do more work because they think it's the way to actually operate. And because of that 9 hours, they lose 4 hours that they could have used for active recovery, for learning, for actually improving their systems that they can then funnel into the next day, and then that will improve their work the next day, right? But because each day is fully capped out to the max with this working, even though they're only getting like 5 hours of actual work, their work actually deteriorates over time. They reach the law of diminishing returns, but instead of actually just staying up here and staying consistent, they actually drop down because they get burnt out and then they crash and burn and fail, right? So, if we actually want to stay in this for the long run, if we actually want to make meaningful content, meaningful products that actually create value in the market and get us like results that we want so we can have time, location, blah, blah, blah freedom, then we need to stay in this for the long term. And the way we do that is by recovering well and focusing on our recovery as an aspect that can be funneled into the next day. So we have to get rid of this mindset of more hours equals more work, when in reality, we should look at the quality of our work and the actual tasks that were produced out of that work rather than the hours, right? So society will tell you quantity, it'll tell you more you can do, the better. I can tell you blah, 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 blah. What I'm telling you to do, which is what's worked for me and my clients, is quality, right? So instead of the 9 hours of working that the average entrepreneur does, instead we want to focus on around 6 hours deep work, split up into 2 3 hour blocks on average, and then those last 3 hours is recovery. And what I mean by recovery, this again, it's controversial advice. It's you won't hear this anywhere else, but I believe recovery, the only way you can actually recover your brain is through sleep, right? The thing is, like, the modern, once again, we've been told that if you want to calm down, if you want to rest after a long day work, you need to watch Netflix, or you need to, like, numb your brain. Like, this is what I used to be told at school. Oh, bro, just numb your brain after school. Like, just watch YouTube and all this stuff. The thing is, a lot of that content, once again, has been crafted to keep you hooked, keep you wired, keep you interested, right? Like, for example, The Walking Dead. I used to watch a shit ton of The Walking Dead, Carl, all this stuff. Basically, at the end of each episode, and like most TV shows nowadays, they have a big cliffhanger. So, what I used to do when I was like 15 years old watching The Walking Dead is I'd watch The Walking Dead, try to calm down my mind at the end of the night, but because I was so hooked, so excited for the next episode, not only would I stay awake for another few hours, but I'd actually dream about zombies. So then I'd have like the shittiest broken sleep, because I'd constantly be waking up in the night. I'd picture like my parents being ripped apart, eating like all these zombies and all this shit, right? I'd picture like Rick shooting mofos in the head, like all this stuff, dude. So the thing is, we're commonly told, like, if you want to recover, you have to numb your brain. You have to, like, turn off your brain with Netflix. By the way, this message was sponsored by Netflix, right? Once again, it's all this advertising, it's all this stuff. The only way we can actually do it is through sleep, because that's actually how the brain goes into these really deep brainwave levels, and essentially brain waves rather, and essentially like recovers us, stores memories, controls our emotions, all this stuff. I won't get into like a full sleep guide, but if that's of interest, let me know, because I can actually like, once again, I know some shit that no one else talks about. The thing is, that is the only way that I've found to actually cure this burnout stuff, apart from pulling the negative veil, which I've made further courses on in Evolution Academy, totally free. You can join, blah, 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 and all that stuff. So that's basically what I want to make this video on. Is, once again, we're commonly told you need to grind, you need to hustle, but due to the law of diminishing returns, due to the fact that that's violating compound interest, due to the fact that it's violating all these natural processes that the universe literally operates on, we're gonna fail. Like, we're doomed to fail. Even though there's outliers that did exist, it's gonna benefit me and you to just believe, like, hey, you know, that's an outlier, cool, I'm not an outlier. I need to do the things that are actually going to keep me in this game for the long run. And the thing is, like, when you stay in the game for the long run, you actually see results pretty quickly. But it's just because we burn out after like 1, 2, 3 months. We never get that initial like 1 year boost, and then we just fail, quit, constantly make this stuff up all over again. Once again, the reason I know is because I've done this for the past 9 years, and this is what I help people with now. So that's of interest. EA, link in the description. Once again, you don't have to join, blah, 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 blah. And I'll see you in the next video. Much love. Catch you later. Bye.